Alright, welcome back to another episode. This is my third time recording this due to production issues. Mostly my fault. Well, today's episode is a little bit different than past episodes. It's still about World War I, most of these episodes will be. But instead of talking about the history of something or the nations that fought in the war or anything like that, this is more of a independent research project that I've been doing. Now, in my little personal collection, I have, maybe 100, 200 of these, and they're different photographs from World War I. Now, this one has the caption of Trenches of the Allies among the dunes and brambles on the coast of Flanders, and it says nothing more. If you go online and look up that photograph with that caption, you might find 3 of those images online. But there is nothing more than that caption. There is no other information on that image. So what I'm about to tell to you in this episode is stuff that I have come to on my own conclusions based off of research that I've found online. So take this with a grain of salt. Now here is that same photograph pulled from the internet. Now, same caption on the internet as well. There is just no information regarding this photograph other than that caption. And when you look at it, there's really not a whole lot that you can just immediately pull by looking at. Like, they're not super distinctive, soldiers wearing some nation's flag on their back. There is no, signs that say exactly where this is. There's really not a whole lot to grab. So, disclaimer, I don't have a history degree yet. And I am an armchair historian. But I did put a lot of effort behind this to research uniforms and rifles and where divisions were at certain times and why things were the way they were. So I put a lot of research into this, but you're not going to find this in the Imperial War Museum catalog or on the Great War forums. You're not going to find it on there because these are independent conclusions that I've come to. And these conclusions that I came to, I have 2 of. One, this is very early in the war, like extremely early in the war. And also the fact that these are Belgian soldiers. Now, both of these conclusions I do have research to back it up with, and we will talk about them in a second. But keep in mind that you won't find this online. So you got to rely on the research that I have provided, and also you should totally go do your own research on this because it is really fascinating to read up on. Now, why do I think that this is early in the war? There's a couple reasons, but the first one is going to be the fact that nobody has a helmet on. If you look at the soldiers in those trenches, they're wearing black, soft caps, almost like kepis, but no helmets. Well, helmets would be widely given out to Allied troops by 1915, the later part of 1915, and especially 1916, almost every troop would have a helmet. But the fact that these guys are all in soft caps indicates to me that this is at least 1915 and before. Now, there is one caveat to this being rear guard units and support units that were not directly on the front would not have helmets. They would be given soft caps for a little bit longer before they got helmets as well. But you can tell that these guys are ready for a battle. They are in a trench, presumably close to the front lines, so the fact that they don't have helmets is a fair indicator this is earlier on. Now, the second thing is that they are wearing black outfits. Black is one of the worst colors you can wear if you want to camouflage yourself. Almost every color has a place that you can camouflage it into, but black is not one of them. Because black sticks out more than it hides. If you are in a burnt forest, the black on your outfit will be darker than the char of the trees, and you will silhouette yourself. If you are running around the white sand dunes, you are going to stick out like a sore thumb a mile away. If you are in the dead middle of night, you will still silhouette yourself because the darkness of the night will not be as dark as the outfit you are wearing. So a lot of nations phased out black from their outfits pretty quickly if they had them because it doesn't blend at all. Like, it's a terrible color to have. The French light blue outfits blended in a little bit better than black does. The green outfits, like the green khaki that the British and the Americans wore, blended in a lot better than black did. Now, even the gray that the Germans wore blended in a lot better. It's just black doesn't really fit in well, and it was phased out pretty quick, which is a good indicator that this is happening earlier in the war. Now, the next thing is that this trench is not built up at all. And when I mean built up, I don't mean reinforced with walls. I mean actually physically built upwards. Now, if you are fighting near the Swiss border against the Germans, you can build down. You can build 40-foot deep mining tunnels and have not a care in the world. But that is because the water table is hundreds of feet below you. When you are fighting on the coast by the, sand dunes, especially in northern Belgium, the water table is only a couple feet below you, which means that when you dig 3 feet down and you strike water, it is nothing but water below that. If you try to dig 4 feet down, there will be a foot of water. If it rains, that water is not going anywhere. So, when you were fighting in the Ypres salient or the Esser front, they would build up. They would dig maybe a foot or two down, and then they would excavate dirt to put in front of the trench, and then they would reinforce that with sandbags and wooden walls, and they would build upwards. They would have tall trenches instead of like deep trenches, and it's really fascinating to look at. But in this photograph, there is no reinforcements in the slightest. There is no wood or sandbags. They have not built up out of the trench yet. These are extremely temporary trenches that they have made to protect themselves for a very short period of time, which is a good indication that this is happening earlier in the war. And to be fair, fighting on the coast like that, trenches were extremely hard to build because of that water table. They really built up differently than a lot of other places. You saw a lot more like standard defensive positions rather than trenches. And the trenches that were built were truly built up and not down. And they flooded fields and made bridges. It was really fascinating. It's just not the standard trench warfare that you would think of. Now, the other thing that leads me to believe that this is earlier in the war is the fact that there is nothing near them. There are no shell holes from artillery. There is no debris or trash anywhere near them to show that they've been there for a while. Their uniforms and weapons are all pristine, beautifully made. But why would it all look like that if it was 1917 and they've been fighting for 3 years? The fighting by the coast like this had a major battle in 14, and then there was another big battle in 17, and then they made advancements in 18, but there really wasn't a whole lot that went on directly on the coast like that. So there's two options here. The first one is that this did happen in, 1914. This is a very early photograph. Or B, this is a photography shoot. But even then, with the situation being as critical as it is early in the war, they really wouldn't spare people like this to go dig a trench and take a photo of it. And C, the third option is that maybe this is later in the war and they've taken a ton of ground, but in that sense, why aren't they wearing the proper, equipment that would follow an invasion in 1917? They're dressed as if it's 1914. So the fact that the trench isn't built up and the outfits don't match and the lack of helmets and the fact that it's all too clean indicates that it's probably early in the war before any of the heavy fighting started. So for these reasons, I think that this is probably 1914, and we'll try to narrow it down a little bit more in a minute. Now, with all this information, I can pretty confidently tell you that this is 1914 or 1915. I am very confident and comfortable saying that. Now, there's another reason as to why I think it's earlier in the war, and that has to do with what they're wearing, but that ties into more of why I think they're Belgian soldiers and not really necessarily about the time period. So now we're going to talk about why do I think these are Belgians and not French or Americans or Italians or British troops. Why specifically Belgian soldiers? So we're going to go over that now. So first things first, this fighting is in Flanders. The caption says Flanders. So with that very helpful piece of information, you can go ahead and knock out the fact that these cannot be Americans and they cannot be Italians, because neither of those two nations fought in Flanders in the First World War. So, good. Done there. So that leaves them being French, British, or Belgians, and there's a bunch of other like smaller nations, but even then, we're just going to stick with those three. Now, we can go ahead and look at their outfits and their weapons for a pretty good indication as to which one they fit inside of. So looking on the left here, you can see what a standard French infantryman would be wearing in 1914. And on the right here is one of our mystery men sitting in that trench. They are not wearing the same outfit in the slightest. You can tell the guy on the left is in a blue overcoat with a blue hat and very, very distinctive red trousers. This guy on the right here is wearing black, not any of the colors the guy on the left is wearing. So we can go ahead and cross out the idea that this is not a French infantryman in 1914. Now, we can then look at this new photo on the left. This guy is one of the territorial units that the French had that they used on this front. Well, the guy on the right, once again, he is not wearing a super cool red cap or a very, ornate red and blue, tunic or very baggy red pants. He's all in black. So this guy doesn't fit any of the French territorial units that were fighting on the coast at any point of the war. So we can go ahead and cross them out. Now, also, even if I was incorrect about the year, they still wouldn't fit any of the French infantrymen later in the war. Later in the war, French infantrymen move over to Adrian helmets in this light blue outfit, and it became very, very standardized. But again, this guy isn't wearing that outfit either. He is wearing black, all black. So, definitely not French, definitely not a French territorial unit. And now we can also look at the fact that he is not a French Marine unit. The guys on the left here are French Marines, and they have blue outfits, but they also have naval caps on. Well, the guy on the right is definitely not wearing a naval cap, and he definitely doesn't have a red pom-pom on top of his hat. He ain't that cool. So we can go ahead and cross out that they are not wearing French uniforms at least. Now, it is also important to note that they are not a British unit either. Well, also on the coast was a British division. The Royal Naval Division was fighting on the coast, and they took their turns over here too. But once again, they were wearing naval hats, and they were in green. Our mystery men are not wearing naval hats, and they are not in green. They are very confidently in black. Like, confidently. So that knocks out the possibility of them being in British uniforms. Now, there is a universe out there where a French unit, for some reason, has a bunch of Belgian uniforms, and they decide to put them on, and then take a bunch of Belgian rifles, and use those, and then a photo gets snapped, and these do turn out to be French units, but they are dressed just like a Belgian infantry unit. Not French, not British, but Belgian. Now to back this up, this photo on the left here is of a Belgian infantry unit in a trench in 1914. And in the middle are drawings of some of what the Belgian army would look like in 1914. And on the right is our mystery man. They look incredibly similar. The guys on the far left are wearing black. The guys on the far right are wearing black. The guys on the far left have black caps that come up a little bit with a very short black brim. The guys on the right, same deal. Hat that comes up a little bit, black brim. And then the drawings in the middle show the same hats and the same overcoats. They are the same people. These are Belgian infantry outfits from 1914, early 1914. By the later stages of the war, the Belgians would end up taking on a lot of French equipment and French rifles, but that drives home the point that this is early on in the war, because units like this would not exist later on. You just would not have these uniforms. It just would not happen. So this is enough to say that these might be Belgian soldiers. It's not really concrete. I'd like to have more, but it's not concrete yet. So then I kept looking, and I found something out about the rifles that they are carrying. And it is between the outfits they have, the location they're in, and the rifles they have that lead me to believe that I can confidently say that these are in fact Belgian troops. Now, this image on the top here is a French Lebel rifle. The image on the bottom is a zoomed in part of our original image showing what the rifle looks like. They are not the same rifle. Now, the stock of the Lebel, the one on top, comes down too far for it to be a match for our mystery rifle. The receiver on the Lebel is metal as well, but our mystery rifle does not have a metal receiver. It is the same dark color the entire way through the rifle. Now, there is one similarity between these two rifles, and that is the fact that both of them have a straight bolt. But that's it. It is not a Lebel. Now the image on top is of a Berthier rifle. This is the other standard issue rifle that France would give out to their units at the start of World War I. But this guy is even less of a match than the Lebel rifle is. You can tell that that stock comes way too far down. The bolt curves down, and while the receiver is shiny, it is not shiny enough. So this is definitely not the mystery rifle that we're looking for. And it is this fact that you can pretty confidently knock out France out of the runnings for who's in this photograph, because the outfits don't line up, the rifles do not line up in the slightest, so we'll keep looking, but it's definitely not French units. Now, I did see that there was a division of Royal Naval infantrymen. Well, they would be carrying Lee Enfields, like the one on top here. Well, the Lee Enfield is also not a match for this mystery rifle. The bolt curves down, the stock comes down too far, it's too short for it to be the mystery rifle. It is just not a fit. So if the uniform don't match, and the gun doesn't match, and the glove doesn't fit, it can't be British either. Well, now we're going to go look at what the Belgians gave to their units at the start of World War I, and that is a 1889 Mauser with a straight bolt. This image on the top here is that rifle, and the image on the bottom is our mystery rifle. You can see the stock comes down just enough, and you can see that it is the same solid dark color with a very shiny straight bolt. And on this new photo on the bottom, you can kind of make out a built-in magazine. A little fun fact about this rifle is that this is the first Mauser to have an extended magazine built into the rifle. The Germans didn't have this. The Germans had a variation of this rifle, but then it got licensed out and the Belgians produced their own. But look at those two photos and tell me with full confidence that that is not a Belgian Mauser from World War I. So the outfit fits them being Belgium, and the rifle fits them being Belgian. And the rifles of the other nations that were there don't fit at all. So it is between these two things that I can confidently say that these are absolutely Belgian soldiers sitting in the dunes off the coast of supposedly Newport in Flanders. Now, that is it for this episode. There is one more thing I would like to go through though, separate from the concrete research that I found earlier. I think I might have narrowed it down to the exact division that these guys were in, but I am not confident enough to say that it is absolutely factual. It's just the timeline fits, the reasoning is sound, so I'm going to say it to you. It's just not something that I want to say is an absolute fact, and that is I think that these are the 2nd Infantry Division from the Belgian Army in World War I. Now, bear with me. Okay, you are a Belgian soldier, and your country has fallen. So your entire army is in a full retreat. You have 6 divisions, 1 through 6. And as they are retreating, they are moving through Belgium, and you guys make a stand over at Newport, and then going down to Ypres with the Belgians, the French, and the British. Well, as you are sitting here, you have all of the refugees from Belgium coming in. And you have reporters from Britain and France coming to photograph this extremely historic moment. But as they are taking photographs, you end up in one of them. Well, you can't end up in a photograph in the trenches later in the war because trenches were highly confidential after about 1915. Because they didn't want photos of how bad the conditions were in the trenches to get back home and hurt their war support. So you have this photograph, presumably from the earlier parts of 1914. Well, who would be holding the coast in early 1914? That would be the 2nd Infantry Division from Belgium. They held the coast for about a month. Mostly just them. There was the 42nd French Division that was there as well. But we've already knocked out the fact that they can't be French. So the only other division that would be guarding the coast in October of 1914 would be the 2nd Infantry Division from Belgium. And it makes perfect sense. after the battle, you had divisions moving in and out, and that's why I can't like confidently say that this is factual, because this could have been taken after the battle, and then who knows what division it is. But right before the battle, when everybody is just starting to dig in, and the landscape is untouched, as I was talking about earlier, the 2nd Division was the ones holding that beach. But they have no patches that you can identify on the soldiers. There's really no good way to tell based off that photograph. But if I had to pick one of the 5 infantry divisions in the Belgian army that was fighting at that battle, I would have to say that the ones in that photograph are the 2nd Infantry Division. But I don't know, so take with that what you will. Now, that's all I have for this episode, and I hope you liked it, because I had the most fun researching the different outfits of the French and British and Belgian armies in 1914, and researching why the trench wouldn't have been built up, and who's fighting in what places and where. Because I will be making more of these. I have more photos that I can show, and I have more photos that I would like to show off, so hope I'll see you guys in the next one.